Last episode, we left you standing in a rising wind, up in the stratosphere manifesting toward its eventual end. We told you the storehouses Enoch saw were real, that the hand on every gate is God's, and that the first gust had already begun to move over a weakening world. We asked you one question, and then we let you carry the weight of it in your hearts until now. Are you ready to move with it? That question is a loaded one, as it also begs another question. What condition are you in? Are you in a condition to even move right now? And what if you feel like you are not? Do not be dismayed. Tonight we tell you where that wind is going. Because a wind that rises out of God's own storehouse is never just weather. It is going somewhere. It has a purpose, a mission, to do something to a covenant people it is sent for. And the oldest vision of where this wind is headed was written down 2,600 years ago by a man God set down in the middle of a valley full of bones. So come and stand where the prophet stood. God set Ezekiel down in the middle of a valley, and the valley was full of bones, and he led him back and forth all the way around them, so he could not look away from a single one. And the word tells us two things about those bones. They were very many, and they were very dry. Not a fresh wound, not the bones of yesterday's battle. These were bones long past hope, picked clean, bleached by the sun, scattered so wide and worn so dry that no one walking past would ever imagine they had once stood up and lived. In totality, that is us right now. For 10 episodes now, we have held up the receipts, and every one of them faced outward. The laws they wrote, the ships they filled, the empire they built on our backs, the machinery still watching us today. Tonight the camera turns around and points directly at us. Tonight we count the cost of what happened on the inside of us from every dimension, what 400 years did not to the record, but to each person, whether they be rich or poor, and everything in between. Think of the unspeakable damage done to the nature of human existence, to the mind, to the body, to the soul, to the spirit. This is the part no ledger ever tallied, because it's priceless. And that is the realest damage of all. And a people will struggle to rise until it has been acknowledged and expressed out loud. Our bones are dried, our hope is lost, we are cut off. Hear what 400 years did, dimension by dimension, and start with the mind. First, they made it a place of terror. You did not know, from one hour to the next, whether you would be sold, whether your children would be standing beside you by nightfall, whether you would be alive to see morning. A human being is not built to live like that, braced every waking moment for a blow that could come from anywhere. And the terror was not the worst of it. They reached in and turned us against each other, set the lighter skinned against the darker, the house against the field, rewarded the one who informed on the other, so that a people who should have been one another's only refuge and strength learned to watch each other with suspicion. They poisoned the well of trust and spoiled the meat of unity at its source. Then they came for the memory. They took the names, the languages, the lineages, and cut a whole people off from the knowledge of who they had been. They made it a crime to teach us to read, knowledge itself treated as contraband, the law standing guard over our ignorance. And here is what the science now tells us about damage like that. Researchers studying the survivors of mass atrocity have found that trauma can leave a mark on the very genes a parent passes to their children, that the body's stress machinery itself can be altered and handed down. They studied it in the children of one genocide. Now really think of it from a linear perspective. We endured 400 years of it. That is not poetry. That is a wound written deep enough to cut into the next generation before it is even born. And there was a torture aimed straight at the mind, dressed up as commerce. The auction block, where a human being was stripped bare, inspected like livestock, appraised, and sold away from everyone they loved, while the ones who loved them most were made to stand and watch it happen. A mother priced in front of her children, a husband sold off in front of his wife. That is not only a wound to the body, that is a deliberate breaking of the mind, the engineering of a grief no human being should ever have to carry. Now consider our bodies. This is the damage you can see, the damage that left marks, and the damage you cannot see, broken bones, organs, and scar tissue. And the empire kept these receipts itself. The forced labor that built the wealth of a nation and paid the laborer nothing, The whip, the brand, the chain, the hangings, the buck breaking, the dismemberment, the disfigurement, torture written directly onto the skin and other parts of our anatomy, and the rape and mutilation done to women's, men's, and children's bodies, generation after generation, with no hope that anyone would hear their cries, except for the ones that should not have, their spouses and children. 400 years of a body that belonged, by law, to someone else. And it did not end when the chains came off. They built a new cage and called it freedom, convict leasing, where a man arrested for nothing was worked to death in a mine or a field, slavery wearing a different coat. They took the medicine too. Experiments performed on enslaved bodies without mercy or anesthesia. Cells harvested from a black woman without her knowledge that would go on to seed laboratories around the world. A 40-year study where treatment was deliberately withheld from black men just to watch the disease run its course. And the toll of all of it is still in the body today, measured in shorter lives, in mothers who do not survive the delivery room, in the bodies that wear out early from a stress that never once let up. Now the soul. If the body is what they could touch, the soul is what they reached for next. But what is your soul? Some say it is your unique identify beyond your physical body, the inner life of personality, thought, consciousness, reason, or the eternal nature of a people, the sense of who you are and whose you are living inside your body. They broke the family on purpose, not as a side effect, but as a strategy. Husband sold from wife, child from mother, brother from brother, sold deliberately in different directions, so that the invisible bonds produced by untold generations before that could never again set and harden into the strength they feared. And the damage has outlived the auction block by centuries, because you cannot tear out the soul that had bound the family structure for 300 years and expect it to somehow knit itself back together again whole the moment the law changes. And then they taught us to see ourselves through their own eyes. This is the deepest cut of all. When the lie has been told so long that a people begins to believe it about themselves. When our own children, handed a black doll and a white one, learn to reach for the white one and call it good, call it pretty, and push the black one away. That is not a child's confusion. That is a study you can read, and it broke the hearts of the people who ran it. A wound that turns a people against their own reflection, taught to measure their worth on a scale that was rigged against them to perpetuate inferiority even to the unborn. And lastly, the spirit. This was the target underneath all the others, because if you can sever a people from God, you can own everything else. Think of it. They tried to steal the image of God off of us. God told us that He created us in His image and likeness, and yet, by man-made law, by whitewashed images, and from the second beast's pulpit, a human being was told they were less than human, subhuman, 3/5 of a person, a thing, an object to satisfy their deviant desires, and told us that God Himself had ordained it so. They handed us a Bible with the liberation text cut out of it, an actual Bible, printed with the Exodus removed, every verse about freedom deleted, leaving only the parts that command a slave to obey. They took the book of the God who breaks chains and tried to turn it into a spiritual chain unto itself. But hear what they could not do. They could not keep the real God out. In the hush harbors, in the brush arbors, in the secret places where they were forbidden to gather, a people reunited with the true and living God they had always known, and recognized Him instantly as the God of the Exodus, the God who once before had heard their cry and came down to deliver. They found the very chapters that had been cut out of their Bibles already written on their hearts. They sang of a coming deliverance they had, and still have every reason to disbelieve and sing it anyway. The empire took dead aim at the spirit of a covenant people, only to see it boomerang right back at them. God took Ezekiel to a valley full of bones, scattered all over the place. And but for the human skulls, it could have been bones from any creature, but it was their condition that told the real story, one of complete and utter devastation. He really had no other choice but to defer to God, and we too must defer, as this is where we are, and given everything that has happened, where else could we be? Think of it, amongst the living and the dead, 100 million people are in this condition right now. So covenant people, can our bones live? Again, Son of Man, Can these bones live again? The prophet would not answer it himself. Ezekiel did not say yes, and he did not say no. He said, "O Lord God, you know." And then God told him to do the strangest thing to do in a valley full of the dead. He said, "Speak to them. Prophesy to these bones. Say to the dry bones, hear the word of the Lord." That is the main reason this series was produced, to tell us that God was and is talking to us through the prophet and through anyone else that knows the truth. Tell 400 years of dry bones that God is not yet finished with them. He's only starting the biggest family reunion in human history. And the moment the prophet spoke, there was a noise, a rattling, a shaking that ran across the whole valley floor. Are you hearing this? Could it be the awesome force of the wind rushing out of the storehouse and tearing through the gates that Enoch saw? Or is it the magnetic field exploding with the magnitude of 1,000,000 transformers when the surge of electricity and energy is too vast to contain, and the bones began to move toward one another, bone coming to its bone, the scattered pieces connecting the proper place they belonged? Then the sinews came upon them, and the flesh came up, and the skin covered them over. Everything we lost in the body, returning. The family knit back to its bone, the stolen wealth, the broken health, the kindred ties that bind, all of it renewed, all of it restored, piece by piece, until the valley was full of bodies whole and complete. Hear me when I say this, it was not a rhetorical question after all. The lesson for us is that the impossible can begin if we allow Him to work through us, in collaboration, in one accord, with Him. Hold on now, wait. Look closely at them. Look closely, because something else is yet unfinished. Are you noticing what it is? Look at them again. A whole valley of bodies, complete in every part. Bone, sinew, flesh, skin. Nothing missing that you could point to, and yet there was no breath in them. Do you see it? They had everything we spent this whole night counting as lost. The bodies made whole, the wealth restored, the family reunited, the health returned, and they were still lying there lifeless, without movement or sound, restored, and still not yet risen, rebuilt, and still no life force. Because a people can get everything back and have a semblance of fulfillment and still not have the one thing that makes them a covenant people. Some of us have very nice things, and some of us have way more than we could want or need. And even though we have some of these things, we do not feel whole, or in some cases even deserving. Is this hitting home? The condition and the image can be fixed, but the likeness of God is still missing, and we feel angst and a groaning from within. We of all people know this to be true. Bodies without breath are just mannequins of the dead waiting to drain the life from the innocent and unsuspecting. So God spoke a second time, and this time not to the bones, now fully rendered bodies, but prophesy to the breath. That's right, He said. Prophesy, Son of Man, and say to the breath, "Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live." The four winds, the same four winds Enoch saw kept in their storehouses, the same wind that began to blow at the close of last episode. God calls on it now, from all four corners of the creation, into the lungs of a people who had everything but His Spirit, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. I know what you're thinking right now, but this is a different army. Just fight the good fight and ask Him to breathe on you. Now let the transformation begin. So look at them carefully now, standing, breathing, fully alive, mind, body, soul, and spirit. An exceeding great army where there had been nothing but dry bones and silence. But do not look at them too long, because this vision was never only about them. God gave Ezekiel the meaning himself in plain words. "Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say our bones are dried, our hope is lost, we are cut off." And then the promise, "Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and bring you up out of your graves and put my spirit in you, and ye shall live." That is not a story about old bones in an ancient valley. That is a covenant people being told, by name, that the grave is not the end of their sentence. What you are really seeing is a reflection of yourselves in the not-too-distant future of God's glory. So hear it as it is meant for you. Let it resonate within your spirit. If you are one of the 100 million, if you have felt the dryness in your own bones, the hope that ran out, the sense of being cut off from who you were made to be, then this word has your name on it, and it's calling out to you. Claim it. Latch onto it and do not let it go. The same breath that filled that valley is the wind that has already begun to blow. It is moving toward you, and all he asks is that you do what the prophet did. Defer to him, align with him, let him breathe on you. You were not meant to raise yourself from this evil, and you were never asked to. When the fullness of the breath arrives, you'll be compelled to stand as a testimony of God's faithfulness.